Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall, book by book, day by day. I originally was going to do this as part of just an ordinary library tour and pull down 10 of these things in 15 minutes. And then I ran out of time, and I thought maybe it'd be better to give them individual attention. So I thought, all right, well, I'll do a couple of these a week. And then I did a couple of them a week, and a great number of you pointed out to me, because I leave my email in every video, a great number of you pointed out to me that a couple of these videos every week is not exactly a daily Penguin now, is it? So I'm properly remonstrated. I now do these every day. And we're arranging all over the map. Yesterday we did poetry, and today we're also doing poetry. Only that will not be the real emphasis. The real emphasis here is not so much poetry as another active question that comes up in Penguin Classic, and that is editions. How do you know what edition? What if Penguin Classic in their history has published more than one edition of the same author? And that is the case in this particular instance, because the author is John Donne, the great poet John Donne. And the first Penguin Classic that we're going to look at is the Complete English Poems. This is edited by A.J. Smith, and it's fantastic. The introduction, the notes, just amazingly good. And that is probably our author, John Donne. And then the second one is from decades later. This is edited by Ilona Bell, and this is the collected poetry of John Donne. And let me get you the exact date here. This is from 2012, and the Smith version is from decades earlier. It's from 1971. So on the one hand, you're the general editor here. Christopher Ricks was the general series editor for this Penguin poetry thing. You might think, all right, well, it's been a half a century. It's time for a new edition of John Donne. And that decision might not have any implication in it that there was anything wrong with the old edition. It's just the standard thing that publishers do, even reprint house publishers. They don't like anything sitting on their shelves to be that old. They just want a new edition, give a new chance for a new introduction, new arrangement, a new editorial consideration to have its day with the readers. Even Loeb Classical Library Editions does that. They just recently published a new translation of The Post Homerica by Quintus of Smyrna, replacing an edition that was 100 years old. And there was nothing wrong with that original edition, but they wanted a new one. So this is going to could throw a potential new reader into a bit of confusion. What's the difference between these two? And they contain, both of them, all of the poetry of John Donne. But the collected poetry, oddly enough, the later volume, despite that being its title, also has a lot of his prose. It has prose works, it has letters, that sort of thing. And it has a new introduction and totally different notes. So you get two totally different editorial viewpoints of this poet. If you're asking my preference, I actually prefer the older one in this case. That isn't always true. Usually it's not. But in this case, I prefer the older one because the older one doesn't have any prose. It's collected poetry. It doesn't have any prose. Donne also wrote poems in Latin, and you just have to account for the different editors' viewpoint of these things. The main question that I had when I knew that there was a new edition was what stance would the editor take when it came to Donne himself? Because, although it's heresy to say, John Donne provokes hyperbole in the literati, the literary critics that assess him. He provokes hyperbole to a degree that I've hardly seen equaled with other poets. I believe Ilona Bell does that in her introduction. Let me see here. I think it's at the end. Yes, she writes, without any irony, "There is no greater or more daring writer of satires, love poems, religious lyrics, or philosophical meditations in the English language." We go over that list again. Satires, love poems, religious lyrics, or philosophical meditations. She says there's no one better than John Donne at any of the four of those things, when there are people better than John Donne at each one of those things. That doesn't mean John Donne isn't great. But that kind of thing is what his critics tend to write about him, and I don't understand that. And Smith is a little bit more reserved. He still venerates Donne, but he's a little bit more reserved about just acceding all this ground to him that he doesn't cover. A better religious lyrics than John Donne. His religious poems are really good. They're also very self-consciously fussy and anagrammy, which I don't know about you, but my view of religion doesn't look like that. I think you could easily name 2 or 3 writers of religious poems in English that are better than John Donne. Love poetry? I ask you. I mean, honestly. And satire? You're actually going to, a critic out there is actually going to make a case that John Donne is better at satire than Alexander Pope? John Dryden? I don't know. I don't know what to do about such things. Fortunately, they don't touch the poems, right? Of course, they don't touch the poems. John Donne is a perfect example of a poet where you will be moved and challenged and confused without any critical apparatus at all. You could pick up I don't know that there are any, but you could pick up a little book of Donne's poetry that has no introduction, no notes, no historical context of any kind. You would still know you were in the presence of something really, really special. In this case, though, you've got plenty of notes and context and whatnot, and you've got 2 different editions to choose from. I don't know why I have both of these. I guess just because if Penguin Classics comes out with a new curation, with a new introduction and new notes to a figure as major as John Donne, I just feel like I should have both. And probably if they came out with a third, I would do that as well. We're going to see that again in your Daily Penguin. You're going to see multiple editions of an author, and this is another case of that. When it comes to a recommend, your Penguin Classic recommend, well, of course recommend John Donne. Of course I do. And I also recommend biographies of him. He had a fascinating life. A lot of poets don't, but he did. But when it comes to which edition to pick, I don't know how I could. I prefer the older one, but you might prefer the newer one. The newer one has more material. The second volume, I should stress, the second volume has more Donne in it. So that's a selling point right there, regardless of whether or not you like the scholar who introduces it. I think it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. I could easily see a reader loving the later volume more than the earlier one. I have them both, and I consult them both when Donne comes up in reviews or in critical essays, and I'm not sure that I'm totally going to the earlier one. When I want to read Donne, I pull this down. But when I want to read Donne, I don't look at the notes or the critical apparatus. So I guess it's just familiarity. I've had this thing so much longer. But anyway, that is your Penguin Classic for today. It's John Donne. So we are doing a little poetry. Could be that's another theme. I'm intentionally not looking ahead because I don't want to make a syllabus out of this. So it could be that we've hit a vein of poetry. We shall see. We'll find out tomorrow. At least we'll know better tomorrow. So I'll wrap this up, and I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.